All right, so Larry, I'd like to shift gears and talk about PitchLogic. You mentioned them before, that they're right near you. We'll just say briefly that F5 Sports is I guess a high-tech company that has created some interesting technologies for baseball, and you are the chief baseball officer for F5 Sports, and they have something called the PitchLogic ball. Can you tell our listeners what the PitchLogic ball is? And then I have a few specific questions about it after you just explain what it is.
Sure. Well, first, in the interest of total transparency, the chief baseball officer line, I was at the winter meetings 2 years ago and saw Joe Torre, and my son was getting ready to interview for a position in the commissioner's office. And so I was talking with Joe, who I knew from obviously being around, and he gave me his card and said, have your son give me a call. And I looked at it, his title was chief baseball officer. And I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm stealing that title at some point in time. So when we reorganized a little bit, I sent him a note and said, just want you to know, you'll see chief baseball officer underneath it.
You know, Larry, I might actually rename myself, instead of co-host and producer, chief baseball officer of the Baseball Rabbi podcast. Just,
there you go.
Now's my turn.
It's got a nice ring to it.
It's got a good ring to it.
And CBO, everybody says, I know all kinds of titles. What is CBO? You know.
Yeah, you and Joe Torre have the same title. How about that?
So it's also a good conversation starter as well.
Okay, so tell us about the ball.
Yeah, and hold on just 1 second. I've got one
Sure.
charging over here. You charge it on a hockey puck, and it is just a baseball. It is just a baseball. And there was a gentleman named David Rankin who worked in the golf industry years back and came up with a machine that was measuring launch angles and club head speed and so forth, using an array of lights and so on and so forth. But he always had in his mind to do something with baseball. And he's not a baseball fan. He just thought it was a really interesting engineering project. And he worked with a fellow named David Sukernik, and they were contract engineers doing projects no other engineers could figure out, mostly for shopping at grocery stores when somebody wanted a display and they needed mechanical movements, they would do that. Well, he had this idea for about 12 or 13 years, and about 4 years ago, the technology improved as far as the silicon and all the different chip technology that he needed to be able to create it. So he started with the baseball, and when I joined the company about 2.5 years ago, they actually were just drilling a hole in the side of it and they had a computer circuit board inside with a number of different sensors and a battery, and they were literally sticking it inside this hole and then putting tape over it, and I would throw the ball with tape on it until the tape came off and the battery died and we had to recharge it. And now we've come up to a baseball that uses the exact same leather that Major League Baseball uses. It comes from the same factory in Tennessee and comes to our facility in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The thread is the same as what goes on a Major League Baseball. Obviously, all the weights and everything else have to be the same so that the pitcher will not feel any difference. And we've got about 21 of the 30 Major League teams are using it as an organization, and players from every organization are using it throughout baseball. But 10-year-olds get it too, because it's new, it's technology, it's got a cool app that goes on your telephone and you connect by Bluetooth to your telephone. And as soon as you throw the PitchLogic ball and it hits a catcher's glove or it hits a net 15 feet in front of you, the numbers are registered on your phone just as soon as you can hold it up.
So what exactly are the numbers? What is it going to tell us? So someone picks up this ball, I charge the ball, I pick it up.
This is what the app looks like, yeah.
Okay, and I guess our listeners could go to the PitchLogic website. What's the URL of the website?
PitchLogic.com.
PitchLogic.com. So this is a ball that someone throws the ball, and then they get a readout of all of these different metrics of how the ball was spinning and how it moved. What else does it tell me?
Well, there's a clock face, and so it starts out giving you arm slot. Because ball, when you hold the ball still in space, it figures out where it is. And then every movement you make after that when you started is being tracked by the millisecond, about 15,000 bits of information per millisecond that are related to the computer, and it measures everything you do after that.
So it knows exactly where it was released, in other words.
When you release it, it knows where it is and it knows when it's released. In a new app that we're coming out with, we'll have a feature called Last Touch, which will actually show you what kind of spin you put on the ball, the last touch that you had with the ball. But arm slot is where it starts. The ball knows where it is in relation to the clock face. So if you're at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, you mentioned Boston. I talked with Dennis Eckersley earlier this week, and we talked about his arm angle and how unusual that is. But it knows exactly where you are in the clock face. It also measures on that same clock face the break direction. So if you're throwing a fastball that you turn over a little bit, or a four-seam fastball with backspin, the ball's turning like that, and while you say it wants to rise, it actually resists gravity and is just not sinking as much from that backspin. But it tells you what direction the break is as well. So then when you go to throw a curveball and you put that type of action on the ball's got top spin, the arrow swings down the other way. So you've got your 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock curveball as opposed to your 115 and 115 spin break on your fastball. So it actually tells you which direction the spin is.
So it tells you which direction the spin is and the spin rate on the spin and the arm slot.
Rate, but then it also breaks it down to side spin, back spin, and rifle spin. Rifle spin, gyro spin, spiral spin. It has a bunch of different names, but it breaks it down to.
So could you explain what that is?
Yeah, what are those different types of spin? What exactly is it measuring?
Could you explain rifle spin or the other names for it? What is it? What type of pitch has it? What is it? What does it look like? What does it do?
Sure. Okay, rifle spin, think of it in terms of when, and this is part of where the name came from, when you shoot a bullet out of a gun, it's spiraling this way, right? Because we want it to go as straight as possible. So if you had something in your rifle that distracted the spin that the rifle puts on and got it spinning a little bit differently, we'd see a little bit of break to the bullet when it goes. So rifle spin is this type of action, gyro action, that keeps the ball going true. Top spin, backspin are the same thing in different directions. So backspin, if we're throwing a four-seam fastball, is the ball going this way that's going to keep it on the same plane for as long as possible.
Back towards the pitcher, right.
Back towards the pitcher, correct.
And that's going to give what's called a rising fastball, which just means that it's not dropping.
It's not sinking as fast because gravity is going to have its effect to make it sink.
Okay, so the rifle spin sounds to me like the slider spin.
Exactly. That's the only, essentially almost every pitch, we want to keep rifle spin as low as possible to get the highest spin efficiency that we can. And we've got a measurement on our app that measures the lift force, which is a measurement of the Magnus effect, which tells you how much, and I call it bite. How fast and how hard is it really breaking as it's spinning in the air. So rifle spin, bad, except with a slider or a cut fastball where you want something that's moving horizontally and moving a little bit horizontally. And so you cut it just a little bit. And those are the cases where you would use rifle spin.
That means that on some pitches, the pitcher is actually trying for a low spin rate.
On curveballs, for example, sometimes or sinkers, you'll see guys. And again, keeping in mind that what you want to do as a pitcher is you want to stay away from the average, right? So you want to be above the average. You want to have the outlier in any pitch that you've got, or you want to be below it. So your soft toss and left-handers like Mike Caldwell or guys like that turn the ball over are getting away from the averages of what the hitter is used to seeing. And we're starting to see a lot of studies now with perception of the way the hitter views it. In our new app, you'll see some different things where you can actually look at the pitch from the hitter's eyes to see what it's doing coming in. But the rifle spin is bad in most situations. On a fastball, you want highest spin efficiency. On a breaking ball, if you get to 60 or 70%, on a curveball, you're doing pretty good, generally speaking. Some of the harder pitches you throw will have a higher spin efficiency. And we also
explain that, Larry? Could you explain spin efficiency when you say, because that's not spin rate. That's
right.
What exactly is spin efficiency?
Spin efficiency is how much you're making the ball break with true spin, so that it's being efficient towards achieving that 100% effort that you want. So and the closest pitch you do it with is a four-seam fastball. When you spin backwards over the top, getting up with a higher arm position, and that'll keep the ball. And that's what, as you said, makes it think it's a rising fastball, but it's just not sinking as much. And on our app, if you punch the rifle spin button, it will convert it to spin efficiency and tell you how close you are to reaching that max that you want.
Okay, so what can a pitcher do? Let's say a pitcher wants to work on a certain pitch. In other words, what can a pitcher do to increase or decrease his spin efficiency in a particular pitch? Like, let's say, you know, a guy buys a PitchLogic ball and he's throwing it and it's not doing what he wants it to do. Let's say he's throwing sliders and they're not breaking enough. So what is he looking to see in the changing spin rate?
Well, you know, in an ideal world, we would have Verlander's fastball and Scherzer's slider or changeup and DeGrom's slider or whatever the case may be in an ideal world. But just because those numbers are there and we know what they are, doesn't mean Lary Sorensen can throw Nolan Ryan's fastball, right? So what we have to do first is we have to establish what we do. You know, what are we capable of? And then start tinkering with how we can change it. And whenever I go to our alumni functions, and since I played for 7 teams, I get to go to a lot of alumni functions. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. They always say, you know, we see that, we know it, and we don't need those numbers. Well, the numbers just put us an objective number to what's really happening that we see. And the guys also say you're just trying to put the coach out of the equation. And in actuality, the answer to your question is the coach becomes the most important factor in the equation, because the coach that has 20 years of baseball experience is the guy that's able to say, okay, you've been trying your slider like this and we're not getting the efficiency that we want out of it. We're not getting the direction. I was a sinker ball pitcher, so I turned everything over. So what I tried to do was tunnel my pitches, sinker slider, so that they went like this at home plate. They looked the same to this point, and then they went in different directions that way, right? So if I was throwing a flat slider and my sinker was going like this and my slider was going like that, now it looks like this going, and that's hard to do. Rub your belly at the same time too, by the way. But, you know, if it's going like this, there are 2 different looks and the hitter can identify it. But if they're going like this from that one point, he's got less time to identify it. So you want to try to shape the pitch to look like the other pitches that you're throwing until it hits a certain point. And so you do it by changing your grip. You can change your arm slot to a certain degree, but you can't do it all the time because hitters will pick up on that. And one of the interesting tools that PitchLogic has is we have a variant on one of our buttons where you can go in and you can rate the pitches, you can identify the pitch, but you can also label it A, B, or C. So let's say you're throwing your normal curveball and it's not the look that you want and your pitching coach wants. Well, the pitching coach says, how about if we turn the ball over and you come off this seam instead? Well, you just hit button B and it labels the next 5 pitches the new grip. So you've got 5 with pitch A, you've got 5 with pitch B. At the end of your day, when you're done, you go into the menu, you hit get report, and it sends you a report of what each pitch looked like.
Very interesting.
You've got 5 labeled A, you've got 5 labeled B, and you say which one is the one that I'm really looking for.
Well, so if someone listening to this discussion wants to use a PitchLogic ball, let's say with their kid who's in a travel league or in Little League, they could just go to the website, buy it, and just start messing around with it? Or are there specific instructions in terms of distance?
There's an awful lot of explanation for what all the terms mean, first of all, you know, in a glossary type form. But we also have a blog, and we've got some people that have come in that use it in their lessons and show you how they try to change pitchers with a certain pitch. You know, in the blog area, there's a lot of more information about what spin is and how it's to be used and everything else. And I can't emphasize enough, we've got a 10-year-old, well, now he's 11, and he's 4'0", and he comes in, and his name is K-Line, and I always use him as an example because Al was my idol when I grew up, and had the pleasure to meet him. It was the biggest contest of my divorce was who got the K-Line steak knives, me or my ex-wife.
Well, you know, Larry, we did an episode after he died a couple months ago. We did an episode dedicated to him. We'll send you it, and you might enjoy listening to it.
Would love to see it. And he got to be a friend when I was broadcasting with the Tigers. You know, I got to have breakfast with Al Kaline and lunch with Ernie Harwell, which is not a bad way to spend it. Then go call a Tigers game. Pretty good way to spend a day.
That's a pretty good day, yeah.
Yeah, that is a pretty good day. But there's a lot of explanation on the website and study it. But so this little 10-year-old Kaline comes in, and he's got video games and he knows his phone. And he said, so Coach Larry, what you're telling me is I need better backspin. And the way I do that is by eliminating rifle spin. How do I eliminate rifle spin? And I said the words that they've been using that since baseball was originated was get behind the baseball a little bit more. And as he realized he needed to get his hand from here over to here, he saw the numbers on the board go up. And as soon as they see that success every pitch, and they see that spin efficiency going up, and they see their rifle spin coming down, and their backspin going up, and their miles and their velocity going up, that's success. And the instant feeling, because as soon as you've thrown the pitch, and they look up at the TV or at the iPad or the phone, and they see what the numbers are, it's instant reward, instant gratification, and instant feedback.
Pesach probably knows what I'm thinking right now. You see, Larry, I have to say, I am an embarrassingly bad athlete myself, but I am the father of some good athletes. I'm the father of 3 different pitchers. In fact, my son Yaakov and his coach, Aryeh Klein, is a regular listener to the podcast. He's about to go into 11th grade, and next year he's pitching on his little league team. It sounds like the kind of thing that he's a curveball pitcher. So
it absolutely is. And what it does, it reinforces a lot of the positive. It shows up the negative pretty quickly because you know it immediately. And we like to emphasize that movement is something that the further you get away from the act, the less you remember about how you did it, right? And if you get the feedback immediately and remember what you did instantly, you can put those things together. When you go back 4 days after you've done something and try to recapture that feel, you just don't have that same kind of recollection.
I mean, this goes back to what you said before, that rather than taking the coach out of the equation, this becomes a very serious tool.
It's a tool
the
for
coach
the coach,
says,
of course.
you know, try this, and then he does it, and then you look at the printout, and then the pitcher understands what he did differently. It just reinforces it. That's incredible.
It absolutely does. And there are so many things that have to work right for the pitch to be delivered successfully, you know, starting from the very first movement you make backwards or sideways or wherever to get yourself into a good throwing position. And when you can get that instant feedback and track it and have something documented, this generation of athlete is different. You know, we're used to telephones, and we're used to computers, and we're used to everything else. You know, I read someplace that there is more computing power in my iPhone than there was in the computers that landed the lunar module on the moon. And when you start thinking in those terms, you realize that we have to adjust and adapt and use the tools and opportunities that are available to us.
That's pretty cool.
So let's just say that again. The website is PitchLogic.com. And you mentioned that there's a lot of major league teams that are now most of the teams are now using this ball. So are you in touch with pitching coaches and pitching coordinators on major league teams who are using this ball?
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. We started last June was when we really started marketing it. And our approach was from the top down, because we said if the major league guys are using it and making it a part of their program, it'll filter down in time. Colleges are using it, you know, colleges that even the ones in the Power 5 conferences that have higher budgets, that have the different machines that cost about $4,500 is our chief competitor. So at $250 for a PitchLogic baseball, it becomes a pretty logical way to get the same information.
Yeah, and that also means that like during coronavirus, when the players were off in their homes and they weren't near some analytics lab, that they could just get one of these balls and work on their stuff. Was that something that happened?
Absolutely. And college teams, when they send their players home for winter break and they want them to throw 2 or 3 times during the break, all the information is stored up in the cloud. So the pitching coach that is in Chicago, that has a player that is in the Dominican Republic that he wants to watch throw in January, as soon as the pitcher in the Dominican Republic throws, it goes up to the cloud, and about 3 or 4 seconds later, the pitching coach in Chicago can watch what the guy threw.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. That
It
that
really
is
is
very,
fun.
very cool. That is
Really is
very,
fun.
very cool
All right.
stuff.
Well, that's pitchlogic.com.